What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is with my friend Natalie Ledwell. She's a best-selling author and co-founder of Mind Movies, the hugely successful and revolutionary online personal development company that has reached over 10 million people worldwide. And right now, she's also launched her brand new groundbreaking emotional intelligence and life skills curriculum entitled Personal Growth Studies into schools here in the US, which is designed to empower youth from ages 5 to 18. And her passion is to also help teachers, parents, and anyone struggling to manage their mental health. And that's manifested itself into an app called FeelWise. Tap into your emotional wisdom. And this app is revolutionizing the way kids, adults, and mental health practitioners and organizations are caring for and managing their group's emotional needs. And in 2020, Natalie had the honor of being knighted by the Orthodox Order of St. John, a humanitarian group recognizing individuals who are not only doing great work, but who also have a big vision of the work they complete in the world. And I can go on and on about Natalie. We actually met at a organizational kind of retreat that we go on a couple times a year and have become friends. So welcome to the show, Natalie.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I always just want to laugh whenever I talk to you. It's so fun. So, Natalie, to kick it off, do you believe that we're creating our own reality? And what does that mean to you?
We are absolutely creating our own reality. And there's a couple of levels to that, because I have been teaching manifestation and law of attraction for the last 15, 16 years. And so even though we're not completely in control of major things like a pandemic, for example, what we are in control of, or what we do have influence over, are the outcomes that we can create from that particular place. So, some people went through the pandemic and struggled hard because of what they were focusing on, what they were thinking about, the actions that they were taking, the blame and the that they were putting on outside of them, and they were, stepping into that victim energy. But then there were some people who went, all right, well, I get to spring clean my house. I get to learn how to cook all these new things. I get to buy an air fryer. I get to, they can shift their mindset to something different. So what I do know for sure is that what we focus on and that we dare to dream, what we dare to set an intention behind, and imagine what it's like to already have that, and then feel the emotions of already having achieved or living that life. we can create that in our life, and I've seen it a million times over.
So, okay, this is so awesome because you said so many things. I think for people listening, it might be their first time even kind of hearing some of these ideas and concepts. One thing you brought up was this idea of what we're paying attention to and, what we're focusing on and what we believe, is possible. So, where do you see most people kind of have the most difficulty when it comes to creating things or new things in their life and have difficulty?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are still in the mode where they feel like life is happening to them. They don't believe, or they didn't get the memo that if they were to change their thoughts and what they focus on, that they actually could create different outcomes in their life. But what I see is that really changing a lot. Uh, a lot of the people that I work with are, in their, well, I'm 55, so they're around my age. And there's this new earth coming in. There's this new frequency coming in. There's this new awareness that people are like, wait a minute, like I actually can create something better for myself, and I can take the responsibility for that. And I think when people start to do this work, the first thing is that they go, well, wait a minute, I don't like my life. I don't like what's happened in my life. So you're telling me that it's all my fault. So for some people, that's a difficult thing to look at. It's like, well, the cool thing is if your thoughts and action got you to where you are now, then if you change your thoughts and actions, then you can have completely different results. So that's revelatory. So, I think that's a great thing. But I think more and more people are seeking out this information. More and more
Mm.
people are having these conversations around manifesting and, meditation and visualization and all these different things, which is wonderful to see because there's so many of us out there. There's been an army of us that's been teaching this information for a really long time. And I think that some kind of big pattern interrupt like a pandemic is really helped people to go, well, wait a minute, I really do want something different. And it's shaken them up out of apathy. Went, right, let's you know, start to create something that I really do want in my life.
So, you're the queen of, I think, manifestation from what I've seen. Just all the types of lives you've lived, really, hearing all your stories. I want to actually double click because you said visualization. And I know you spent a big chunk of your career creating a company called Mind Movies or co-creating a company called Mind Movies. Can you tell us like what is Mind Movies and why are the images that we see day to day so important for manifestation?
Yeah. So Mind Movies was born out of a wave of excitement about visualization. So the movie The Secret came out in 2006. And when I watched that movie with my then husband, Glenn, I remember thinking, where's this information been all my life? How did I not know about this? I mean, I was handed my first set of cassettes, Brian Tracy cassettes, when I was 21 years old. So I knew all about the setting the plan and, and setting your goals and doing all those kind of things. And I'm like, wait. So I don't have to work that hard. Like, yes, I need to have goals and I need to know where I'm heading, but I would always set myself really easy to attain goals. Or if I couldn't see the whole plan, then I'm like, well, I don't even know how this is going to happen. And having something like the law of attraction introduced went, well, yes, have that, but don't be married to it, because if you're focusing on what you want, you know what that is, you're clear about that, you see it, you feel it every day, then some amazing things are going to fall into place, things that you could never have planned for in a million years, that are going to help you to do that. And we are the poster child for that concept. A friend of ours approached us with this, little movie slideshow that he created. And it was like affirmations on PowerPoint slides with photos in between that matched the affirmations and music, like song over the top. And the secret had just been on Oprah. So everyone was just crazy about this. He goes, look, I've got this idea to set up a website to sell the instructions so people can make these movies for themselves. And so Glenn and I at the time had 4 businesses. We need another one like a hole in the head. But we did know that this was a great idea. And so within a year of going, okay, let's pull the trigger on this, we put one little video up on YouTube. We then had so many emails from people going, wait, this is changing my life. I'm like, all right, boys, we need to pay attention here. Like, how do we do this internet thing? We ended up coming over to the US in April 2008, went to an internet marketing seminar, got accepted into a mastermind group, worked our butts off for 5 months in San Diego. Our launch happened in September of 2008, which is when the economic crisis had hit the planet and everyone was losing their homes and their jobs and a whole bunch of stuff. And by that stage, we'd, accumulated 120 grand on credit cards. So I'm like, what does this mean? And we ended up doing a $700,000 launch, selling a little $97 program, just helping people to hope and focus on the positive things they did want to create in their lives, through this little slideshow. So the reason that these things are so effective is there's layers to it. Number one, to make a mind movie, you kind of have to get clear about what it is that you want. Now, a lot of us know that we want to be happy and that we want to be wealthy and that we want to be healthy, but we don't really sit down and go, but really, what does that look like? What does that mean to me? And so when I'm taking people through the process of making a mind movie, I'm like, okay, we're going to write affirmations, because in essence, a mind movie is a visualization tool. So I need to write it as if it's happening now, because I need to see it in my mind as if it's happening now. And so I go, I want you to think about what it is that you want and describe it like you've got it now, whether that's $1 million in the bank, if it's, a successful business, if it's, a supportive and loving relationship, whatever that is. Then I want you to describe what life looks like once you have that. Because really that's what our visualizations are. It's visualizing us already living that life and already being there. So think about what that looks like. How does it change your day? How does it change your life, to have reached this goal? Then I want you to also focus on why you want it, because that's going to keep you going. And when you're watching your mind movie every day and you're reminding yourself why you're stepping outside your comfort zone and, doing this extra effort, it keeps you going. I want you to think about any kind of actions you need to take, how you need to change the way you think. Because if our thoughts have got us to this point, but we want a different outcome, how do I need to change the way I think and have more positive thoughts that are focused on that outcome? And then the last thing is I want you to describe who you become. Like, who do I need to be to step into this new life? So even just being able to articulate all of that in affirmations is powerful within itself. Then, of course, you add images and add photos, which are going to give your mind a starting point of what to visualize and what to think of when you're going into your visualizations. But the music is the secret sauce, because we can visualize as much as we want, but unless we can feel the emotions of what it's like to already be there, it's going to be a challenge for us to create that in our life. Now, the reason our emotions are so important, because our emotions are the frequency that we are sending out into the unified field, out into the universe. And whatever is a vibrational match to that frequency will then be attracted back to us, that will be able to come to us, or we'll be able to notice these opportunities and these people and things that are coming and showing up for us to help us create that. That's why the emotion is so important. So when I'm helping people make their mind movies, which I've helped thousands of people personally make their mind movies, because I toured with Joe Dispenza for 9 years, I'm like, okay, if you're looking for love, then you use a love song, because that's the emotion you want to elicit. If you're, looking at, a general life thing, then you want something up tempo that's going to get you excited, something that has meaning to you, that's going to help you to get into that, emotional alliance. So, the multiple levels of the mind movie is what makes it so good, rather than just looking at static photos out of a magazine sticking up on a board. This is like the next level to that.
Yeah. And, you said you toured with Joe Dispenza, and what was that like, in terms of, his workshops? It was like sort of an add-on or some kind of program that you put people through, or how did that work?
Yeah. So Joe and I got introduced to each other, I don't know, 10 years, 11, 12 years ago or something. I have to allow for the pandemic time vortex. I have to add a couple of years. But we got introduced by a mutual friend, and he saw the potential in my movies and how it really complemented what he was doing. So, with Dr. Joe Dispenza, he really helps you through explaining the science, the epigenetics, about how when we, through the power of our mind, we can heal, we can create certain outcomes in our life. We can, basically completely change our DNA if we wanted to do that. And so how he would use mind movies, and what I would do is do little workshops so that I would help people make their personal mind movies. And then I'll never forget the first time that he used the mind movies in the event. So his process is that we'd all sit in the room, and it had this huge kaleidoscope visual thing happening up on the big screens. And by softening our focus and looking at the kaleidoscope, it would take us into trance or suggestible mind. So you're sitting there and you're watching the kaleidoscope and listening to the music. And then he's like, okay, now watch your mind movie. So everyone's got their headphones in and they're on their device. And I remember looking back in the room and seeing all these faces just lit up because the room's pretty dark, just lit up from their devices. And now everyone's watching their mind movie repetitively for a little while. Then they go back to the kaleidoscope, back into trance, then back to the mind movie, watching that over and over. Then we go back to the kaleidoscope, but we're listening to the song of our mind movie. So now that becomes the anchor of the future that we're looking to create. And then we go into meditation. And while we're connected to the unified field and we're in that, resonating at that 5D, we then choose a slide out of our mind movie and we dimensionalize it while we're connected to the unified field. So rather than, seeing ourselves as a character in a movie, we actually imagine ourselves actually in that moment. What are we touching? What are we feeling? What are we seeing? What do we smell? I had one woman in Australia I never forget it. She had, her and her husband were in debt and they were trying to sell their house. It had been on the market for a month and they hadn't had any offers on the house. And so she's like, don't worry, honey, it's going to be fine. I'm off to Dr. Joe's. We'll work it out, So when she's doing this activity, she's in her living room. She can feel the pen in her hand. She sees herself, pressing down and signing the contract. She can smell the aftershave of the real estate agent. And she can feel the bubbles on her nose as they're, drinking and tasting the champagne because they're celebrating. Because they've sold the house, and she's just washed with relief. Some people go, well, what am I going to feel like when I get there? And I'm like, I don't know. What are you going to feel? And you don't necessarily be feeling gratitude or love or joy. It could just be something like relief. And so that night she goes back to her room. There's a text message from her husband going, call me. And she calls and he goes, look, we got an offer in the house. He goes, it's not for what we want, but I think we should take it. And she's like, nope. She goes, just hold on just a little bit. So again, next day we're doing the same process, except this time she sees the amount that's written on the contract, and 3 days later they got an offer on the house for that amount. I've seen people who through their mind movie have described themselves, like there was one woman also in Australia, but she was South African. She'd flown from South Africa to be at the Australian event. She had ALS. She'd been in a wheelchair for 7 years, and I saw her get up and walk a few steps on the beach. First time she'd been out of the chair for 7 years. There was one gentleman from Spain who had some condition where the liquid was seeping into his eyeball and he was going to lose his sight. And so he, watch his mind movies, sit down, do his meditation every day. 3 months later, the doctor goes, I don't know what you've done, but this condition is completely gone. He goes, that never happens. So when we can be very intentional about what it is that we want, and we put all this energy behind it and this focus, and we can feel ourselves in the moment. Not only are we sending that resonance out into the field, but what we're also doing is creating new neural pathways in our brains. because our subconscious mind really doesn't know the difference. It doesn't realize that what we're creating as this very vivid moment in our mind is not real. So it starts to create these new neural pathways, and along these neural pathways are traveling thoughts that are in alignment with this moment that we've created. Now, so as we're moving towards it, rather than these old programs, these old limiting beliefs, these new thoughts are coming through. Now, these new thoughts are positively impacting our actions. So all the things that were hard for us to do before, like getting out of bed and exercising in the morning, or making those sales calls, or building that website, or whatever that is, that was a chore before. Now it's just so much easier because everything is in alignment with that. So when you have the trifecta, thoughts, actions, and emotions all in alignment with that outcome, you will manifest it in the most serendipitous and surprising ways, and faster than you can ever imagine.
Mm. So, Natalie, this is awesome. I think for everyone listening, I feel like a lot of people are going to be, much more aware of their thoughts, actions, and emotions. And I'm also curious, Natalie, how are you practicing this today? Like after spending so much time in this space, is it automatic for you, or do you still have a meditation practice?
I still have a meditation practice, and I still make mind movies. Like, I will make a mind movie at the beginning of every year. And I do a general one, like a few slides on my health, on business, relationships, that kind of thing, travel, experiences that I want to have that year. So that'll be my beginning of the year mind movie. But then anything of worth that I'm working on, I will make a mind movie for it. Because with anything, like especially like we have this new app that we launched called the FeelWise app, which is around supporting emotional and mental well-being. Now, the entire team that's working on that app has contributed to that mind movie. We all want to be focused on where it is that we're heading, who our clients are, who we're serving, the income that we're creating, the amount of people that we're reaching. We want to have a visual picture of that, and we want to be focused on that. Now, if one person's focusing on that, that's fantastic. But if we've got a whole team of people, whew, I mean, that's a manifestation tenfold. And so we're all putting in all our energy into that outcome. And when we're very clear about where it is that we want to end up, that's when, even when you don't know how, like you don't know the exact plan, you don't need to know the exact plan as long as you know exactly where it is that you want to end up, because the plan will unfold for you.
I love that so much. And how often do you and your team review your mind movies? Is it daily? Is it multiple times a day? Is it once a week?
So I have multiple mind movies, but I use them in different situations. So, for example, I'm the type of person that likes to exercise in the morning. If I don't exercise in the morning, then that's not happening. So I make a mind movie around my health goals, and I will watch it either if I'm feeling pretty tired, I will watch it before I even get out of bed. Because it's reminding me of what my goals are and why I want to do that. Sometimes I'll watch it as I'm walking from my condo to the building, the gym, and here in the building. But I try and do it before the activity that I'm going to do. Like when I was before, when I was single, I had a mind movie around the love that I wanted to create. Well, I would watch that mind movie before I went online, because it not only reminded me of the type of partner that I was looking for, so that as I'm going through the profiles, if someone popped up that fit that description, I would recognize them pretty quickly. But it also had me in that resonance of love, of relationship. So I'm hoping that, well, not hoping, I know that when I'm in that frequency and I'm online looking at profiles, then the person that matches that frequency will then be attracted to me as well. If I'm sitting down and doing a whole day working on content and everything for the app, then I will watch that one. So I like to use them when they're connected to the activity that they're related to.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, once you make it, well, for me, because I've been doing this for so long, I watch it maybe for the first month or something, and then I don't need to watch it after that because it's already
Mm.
in there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
honestly, before the month is up, there's, like my 2024, I think within the first month and a half of it had already been manifested. So I'm like, okay.
That's amazing. It's funny. Last year, I think when I started doing Mind Movies, I kind of put something together, but I didn't really think much of it. I spent a couple weeks looking at the Mind Movies, and it was so funny because there are a couple of things that I put in there that were sort of random. And I put like this like picture of Paris, like the Eiffel Tower, and then I had put a picture of Jay Shetty, I don't know, maybe to have him on the show. And it was so funny because in about 4 months, I ended up going to Paris, like very impromptu. There was no plan. And, looking back, it just like a lot of things had to kind of conspire for me to be there because I've been to Paris so many times and I really wanted to go to a lot of other cities. But it was really funny that I ended up in Paris and I had an amazing time. And then I also ended up meeting Jay Shetty's like very good friend. So it was wild just how much synchronicity came from even just a couple images. And now I'm like, wow, I have to go back and create a whole new Mind movie for this year now. But there's something about looking at the visual and image that makes the possibility, I think, maybe more solid. That's what it feels like, at least for me too. So I'm
Yeah, I
curious.
mean,
Yeah.
I've had, and it's happened so many times, because especially at the Joe Dispenza events. So, I remember this one woman come in, this is early days, and she sits in and she's sat down and she's got her arms crossed. And I'm like, all right, guys, I'll look after this one. So I come over and I go, hi, do you need some help? And she goes, look, I'm not good at technology. The only reason I'm here is because Dr. Joe said I had to. I don't even have a computer. And I'm like, it's okay. I said, I'll loan you my computer and I'll get you started. And I think it took her maybe 30, 40 minutes to finish her Mind movie. And then she goes, okay, I'm done. And I'm like, great. I said, well, let's preview it before we send it to the server to get processed. And we press play and this woman just starts crying. She goes, oh my God, that's my life. That this is going to be my life. I went, yep. And this is the reaction a lot of people have as well, because we can very esoterically go, yeah, I'm going to be wealthy and blah, blah, blah. But unless you can really crystallize what that looks like or what that feels like or what that means, um, it's very difficult to create it. So when you have this tangible, moving, dynamic, little movie that's really describing what you want, but you're already attaching the emotion to it. You're already getting excited for it. And I can't even tell you the amount of people that I see at events and different things that go, oh my God, I made my first Mind movie. And then I was watching it, but then I kind of forgot about it. And then I found it. And oh my goodness, everything in the Mind movies come true. And I'm like, yeah, there's not one thing that I've put in a Mind movie over the last 15 years that has not materialized. So this is
That's
the
amazing.
power that we all have. This is the ability that we all have. We just don't realize it.
Right. Well, it's interesting because like I was thinking a lot about like the screens that we're sort of forced to watch in life. Like it seems like everywhere, billboards and you're on a plane. Like I don't even watch movies because I know how important it is to be aware of what I'm taking in. But when you're on a plane, you can't really escape. The person next to you's got a movie on.
Right.
And I find that we're just so submerged in other people's screens and even our own screens that oftentimes don't have the images that we want to see. So I love that Mind Movies is like the clear alternative to creating agency within your own life, like to really just choosing the images and the visuals and the music and the feeling states on one screen that you have left
Right.
really in the game of life. So I'm also curious, like what about moments when you sort of get shaken off or move into duality? How do you deal with difficult situations, like knowing all this and having access to the space?
Yeah. Well, especially because I've been doing a lot of work in the emotional intelligence space. I realize that as soon as I start to not feel good, this is when it's my wake up, Nat. You're on autopilot. You're not, you're not remembering that, we are in this beautiful, loving collective, and you get to choose. You get to choose what you feel and think in this moment. Because we can get caught up in the grind. And I'm one of these people that's always burnt the candle at both ends. I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to always rouse on me for that. Burning the candle at both ends. I'm like, yeah, well, that's just who I am. But you get into the grind of this, and you have responsibilities, and then you've got the kids and the spouse and everything else. So to have a practice where, number one, you have enough space to go, oh, I'm not feeling good. Let me check in. What is this? Where is it coming from? Okay, I know I'm feeling this. All right, what am I choosing instead is important. Starting the day with a moment where you can, I like to meditate. I like to, ask universe a question. I like to journal, but just be in this space where I create enough silence for inspiration, for guidance, for things to come through. Especially if I've got a lot of things on my plate that day and I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to get this done, or what are we, like I've got a full day training tomorrow, and I'm doing a presentation to my coaching coaches about how to use their intuition in their coaching sessions. So I'd had a little bit of an outline yesterday, but then this morning when I woke up, I just sat and just I visualized myself teaching. I'm going through the process in my mind, and then poof, the whole download comes in. But I make a practice of doing that. The more that you do that, it's like a muscle, then the more yes, I've created that intentional space for it to come through. But I also navigate my day in a way where I still allow space for stuff to come through when I'm in the shower, or when I'm unpacking the dishwasher, or, doing some unconscious kind of exercise, or activity. I want to also be aware and live in that space where I'm inviting, even when I'm not asking a question, I have guidance coming through. And I think part of that is not just the practice of it, but the belief that we can connect. Like, there are so many people right now who are really understanding and are channeling and encouraging other people to channel, and realizing, wait, we can all do this. Where was that memo handed out? But we're starting to realize this now, that and it is also making sure that I'm very cognizant of my frequency, of my vibration.
Mm. So that's so beautiful, Natalie. I mean, it's interesting, like, just being self-aware is such a big skill set right now too. And that's one thing I think about a lot when I think of you, because I think we were in the car one day, and I don't know, I said something that maybe came off a bit judgmental, and you had said, you know what, I have no judgment on this topic. I totally accept it. And it was so profound to me, because I find that I'm quite, I think at least that I have a lot of self-awareness and try to sit in a space of awareness. But you really, truly embody that more than anyone that I think I've ever met. It's just the space of occupying awareness and not, moving into duality or judgment as much as possible. I'm curious, like, how did you cultivate that skill set? And and how can you sort of teach us, the audience, how to navigate and become awareness?
Yeah, I mean, over the last 16 years, I mean, like you said, we've reached 10 million people. Like, the stories that I've heard, and the life experience that people have gone through, it's just a challenge to ever go, well, I have judgment on your action there, because, even you and I, in this exchange that we're having right now, behind each of us is our life, is our limiting beliefs, our childhood, our culture, our previous experiences. All of that is coming into us in this moment, and is a filter through which we're sharing our ideas and our opinions, and having this exchange. So, and I teach a lot of people and work a lot with adults, which is why I started working with kids, is like when we're children and we're in this very, between the ages of 2 and 6, when we're in theta brainwave activity and we're like little sponges and we're, looking through the eyes of a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and, something is said to us and we take it on as this truth. We see it through this different filter, but then it gets stored in our subconscious mind, and then that becomes our filter that we navigate through life with. I'm one of 8 children, come from a big family in a country town in Australia. And when I'm teaching people about this, I'm like, look, there was 8 of us. And when we recall a situation or an event that happened, some of us remember it and some of us don't. Some of us, it had, we remember it, but it didn't really have much of an effect. And for some of us, it changed the course of our life. It influenced our personality. So I understand that, for a lot of people, when they're navigating through life and they're, like if someone's showing up and they're unkind or they're a bit crabby or something in that moment, my first thought goes to, oh, I wonder what happened to them earlier today, from them not to be or not to remember that they're this emanation of God, that they're, we are all love. But this human in this moment is just forgetting that. And I'm like, and then my mind could go wild. I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder what happened. And like, there's a million different things. There's a million different ways that people can describe, or that motivates them to take certain actions and do certain things. There are some people who, oh my goodness, like a lot of the people, like I said, I work with are like in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And when they realize, oh, wait a minute, the reason I don't have the wealth that I want right now is because when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to the corner store and go pick out something, and they'd choose some kind of candy or whatever, and then one day they went to the store and they chose some candy because they didn't realize that you had to pay money for it. Like they were just like Dad said, And then when they went home and their father realized what had happened, they got in trouble. They didn't really know what was going on. They had to go back and return the candy. And so they had formed this association between money and getting in trouble, or this awful emotion. So that this woman was in her 60s when she made that realization. So, it's not like I'm letting humans off the hook, because, if someone is unkind or mean to me, I have very strong boundaries, and I will, make sure that they realize that that's not the way that I like to be communicated to. And I also understand that, and I had that empathy and could go in, well, what's happened, what's going on, tell me, and open up that space for them to be able to do that. So, you just never know. And like I've like millions of people I've worked with, and it's just like the stories that I have heard. It blows my mind. And so most
Yeah.
people don't realize that they're navigating life through that lens.
Mm. Wow. So it's such a powerful reminder, I think, again, that we have our own agency, that we're not victims to this life, that we can, get back into the driver's seat. So I really love what you said earlier, that the moment you notice that you're not feeling good is when you start to pause and connect with this like universal kind of energy field, whatever you want to call it, source, divinity. But yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm curious, Natalie, you've been working with children a lot more now than adults. What are some of the themes you've noticed when working with children, especially coming out of the pandemic? Like, what are you kind of noticing when it comes to mental health, emotional regulation, and also openness?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is its own epidemic, its own challenge right now. And there's a number of reasons for it. The pandemic really just accelerated and highlighted what was already there. I'm reading this awesome book at the moment called The Anxious Generation. It's by Jonathan Haidt, and he was one of the authors of The Coddling of the American Mind. And he lays out in very explicit terms why this Generation Z just really have no coping skills. They don't know how to handle life, and it has everything to do with smartphones and with social media. We know that when as a child is developing, there are certain social, psychosocial, development stages that they need to go through, which this new generation are completely missing because their faces are in their screen 24/7. And he outlines how, like, when we were kids, like, and I don't know about you, but when I grew up in Australia, it was a pretty safe country town. Mum be like, "All right, get out of here, and I don't want to see you till lunchtime." And so we'd go out and we'd ride our bikes and we'd climb trees and we'd find, construction sites and ride our bikes over the big mounds, and we'd play and be imaginative and just do these things to kill time before we could go back for lunch. This next generation, they're not allowed to leave home or walk the streets by themselves. They're certainly not allowed to go to a playground and play. And there's a lot of social skills and human skills that they pick up through play and competition. Everyone gets a trophy on the soccer team. They're not they're not really having or experiencing any consequences from their actions. So we've got overprotective parents that are like overprotective in the outside world, but no protection online. And so they're missing, some very vital parts of their development. Like I'm talking to colleges as well, and they're like, "Oh God, these kids that are coming through now, they just, not only do they not know how to handle life or how to handle life without their parents, a lot of them are dropping out early because they just don't know how to cope. They don't have the emotional fortitude. They don't have the resilience. So this is the challenge that we're seeing. And of course, when I, beam into classes here in the US, especially grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, you're like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you like to do? They all want to be an influencer. I'm like, come on. So my next question is, so what is the positive message that you'll be putting it out in the world to make the world a better place? They're like, oh no, we want to do makeup tips. We want to do whatever. I'm just like,
Wow. Yeah. It's fascinating because I've heard this from other guests who've said that, this generation coming in is like lazy on the level of relationships. Like, there's a lack of understanding when it comes to interpersonal relating, and also laziness. Like people just
I
don't
wouldn't
really.
say lazy. I wouldn't say
Mm,
lazy. They just haven't had they just don't have the interaction. Like,
mm,
Australia is the most recent country that bans phones in schools. When they're not the first, but they're definitely the latest country that have done that. And so, like, they're going out in the playground at lunchtime, and no one's even playing. They're all on the screen, so they're missing out on that interaction. So I wouldn't say that it's lazy; it just hasn't been modelled. And the
mm,
other challenging thing, because I know this is a dark subject to talk about, but the suicide rate in this country, specifically, but definitely around the world, is unacceptable and astronomical. It is crazy because what's happening is that as when they're at this age where they're trying to figure out who they are. Now, normally you would do that in relation to your peers, your friends at school and so forth. But these kids are trying to compare themselves to Instagram photos that are photoshopped, that are not real. And so they're feeling inadequate.
right. Right.
The bar has been set too high. And the even sadder statistic is that boys and men are committing suicide at 4 times the rate of
Wow.
girls and women at the moment. Because again, it's like we don't encourage boys to talk about their emotions. Actually, most people don't, and parents are, look, they're 2 jobs to survive. They're stressed. They've got all these things going on. They've just gone through 2 years of a pandemic where they didn't know if they could really look after the safety of themselves and their children. So they're anxious. So this is what's being modeled for the kids. So we've got this whole thing, and then of course boys are told, don't cry. Stiff upper lip. Don't be a girl. And so they're not even encouraged to talk about it. Like we were talking to a military school in Missouri, And the school counselor was saying she has to suggest emotions that they may be feeling because the boys can't even put words. They can't even
Wow.
describe what it is that they're feeling, which is why the FeelWise app is a tool which is great for this. We have lessons in there even for parents, like how do you talk to your kids about their emotions? How do you help them? How do you get through to them? But even between each other, because a lot of adults, we're really good at suppressing that old chestnut. I was really good at that. Or you're either suppressing or you're blowing up, and there doesn't seem to be anything in between. So, really getting tapped in and aware of what it is that we're feeling, the emotions, and what you can do to shift that emotional energy, I think is the number one thing that the planet needs right now.
Wow. That's, yeah. I actually looked up the stat, and it looks like suicide has gone up over 30% from 2000 to 2020, and then significantly higher in the years after that. So yeah, it's wild. Well, okay, so I want to
Let's go back to
actually,
something happy.
let's go back to something happier. I mean, I think it's so important to highlight that is definitely something that's happening. And I also want to say of the younger generation, because one thing I have observed, and we've also had guests say this about the Zoomers and the younger kids, is that they're sort of riding or coming into this life on a very sensitive and also higher wave of consciousness. So it's difficult because they're trying to make sense of this world that they're moving into, which it doesn't compute with what they maybe intuitively understand. So I often see that as a disconnect. Like I've frankly think like some of the kids coming through are so intuitive, are so brilliant, have such a high level of consciousness, but sometimes there's just such a massive mismatch with the family that they've been born into, or the group that they've been born into. So that can be difficult and jarring. So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm curious, Natalie, as we're coming to time, what are the things that have surprised you the most, looking over the last 15, 20 years, working in my movies, now doing more on the kind of emotional mental health side with kids? What has surprised you the most about humanity, about reality, all of it?
I think the thing that surprises and delights me is that, I have a coaching academy. So I certify people to become coaches, and I have an online, program called the Ultimate Success Masterclass. And I very frequently have 80-year-olds, 85-year-olds, 70-year-olds in those programs who are like, well, I've still got steam. I'm still, I still want to contribute. I still want to make a difference. They're still doing the work and looking at, their childhood programming and having the courage to look at that and to be able to shift that and then go, well, and I still want to make a contribution. I look at my parents and, oh my God, my mum is 86 and she's with dementia in a home, and my dad is 76 and he's just, sitting at home on the couch watching TV. And I'm just like, the older generation, for me, I love when I can really sit with them and they're just willing to do the work and go, okay, well, what else can I do? How else can I contribute? I'm not down and out yet. I'm ready to still, live. I'm really willing to live until I stop living. And I love that.
Mm. That's so beautiful. Yes. You have more energy than I think anyone I know. So I feel like it's so funny because people usually say that about me. Like I have so much energy, but when I'm with you, I'm like, I don't know what Natalie is plugged into, but it's amazing. So Natalie, like who has inspired you the most since you've been on this path, looking over your life?
That's a good question. Because, I started watching The Secret. And then I started to become friends with all the people that were in The Secret and, part of the Transformational Leader Council and meeting some of the authors of the books that were really pivotal in my life, and thought, and you have this, put them up on this pedestal and like there's amazing people, and then you meet them and you go, "Oh, you're a human being." Okay. Who, sometimes makes mistakes and, does human stuff. You're not this, godlike figure that I have built up in my mind. Um, I think for our business mind movies, Bob Proctor, he passed away a year or so ago, and he was one of the bigger people, like the more well-known, high-profile people that saw Mind Movies and jumped on and was so generous and so helpful and so supportive in helping us get Mind Movies out into the world. Like I have a testimonial from Bob on my website, and it's just he was just this incredible human being. Mary Morrissey is another one of those people. Been in the industry for 45 years. And I was just at her Dream Builder event recently, and just this amazing person, but just so helpful and so generous. Uh, these are the people who, when I grow up, I want to be like them.
Mm.
And I feel like I am embodying that now because, any new people that are coming through, especially if they're Aussies, I'm like, let me give you all the help that I possibly can and be generous with that. But that's how I want to, live my life. And that's part of the legacy that I want to leave as well. Working on the internet really does make it easy for me to settle into the knowing that we are in an abundant universe. There is no competition, that we all support each other, which we have from the beginning. We have a lot of affiliates and people who have similar businesses to ours, and we all promote each other and we all support each other. And we do it because we know that all boats will rise. And if we're all supporting each other, then we get to reach more people and change more lives. That's what it's all about. There is no competition. So I'd say that Bob Proctor, Mary Morrissey are definitely the two that have made the biggest impression on me.
Amazing, amazing. And what do you want to tell our listeners about their well-being? What's like your main takeaway or call to action?
I think really settling into knowing that life is happening for your highest good. I think Oprah would say it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Because even when things show up that are really, maybe not what we like, or as my friend Lisa Nichols says, it's a gift wrapped in sandpaper. Uh, Even when those moments arise, and you don't, like, in the moment, maybe you don't realize it, and maybe the reason you're going through that moment is because you really need to feel those emotions that are attached to that event. But always wanting to see the positive, always wanting to see the lesson or the opportunity or the moment of growth that those moments bring. I think when you can always live life from that place, knowing that, even though it's not good, it's still going to be good for you in the long term, and always looking for that, like making a point to look for it and realizing that, you really can positively influence the outcomes in your life. Then we get to live a life where we feel like we can make a difference, that we feel happy. And just by being happy and resonating at that high frequency, we make, even if we don't do anything in our vocation to help the world, that in itself is all we need to do because we're positively influencing the people around us.
Amen for that. Yes, and what an important point to leave with, like, who you are in the moments of you interacting with people is influencing, our culture, our greater consciousness. And I think a lot of people forget that. So, and I know that you mentioned earlier that you go, back to self always whenever you're feeling off, and you come back into that higher self always. So I think that that's a powerful exercise for people who are listening as well. And Natalie, are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you or learn more about the app that you're working on now?
Yeah. So you could go to feelwiseapp.com and you can find out all the information about the app there. Obviously, it's in the Android and Apple app stores. You can find it there as well. Or if you go to mindmovies.com, there you'll get to see the Mind Movies and a whole suite of products that we have. You'll get to see a video of the story because, I alluded a little bit to our Mind movie story, but that was definitely the rainbows and puppy dogs version of that story. We were watching our Mind movie relentlessly to get over those challenges that came up during that time. So you'll find out a whole bunch, and there's some free resources there as well. So, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Natalie, thank you so much for your time. It's just always such a pleasure to talk to you. And I always feel so inspired every time we have a conversation. So I'm sure that the folks listening will as well. And thank you so much for your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure, darling. Thank you.
And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about the power of manifestation with Natalie Ledwell. And if you're enjoying these podcasts, we greatly appreciate a review on Apple or Spotify. Or if you think a friend might need to hear some of the wisdom from our guests, we'd love for you to share this episode. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.